Childhood can be an unreliable narrator, leaving you feeling distorted and confused about your past. This is what happens when innocence fades and the nostalgia that used to be a happy reminder becomes a requiem for who you could have been. Before you know it, you are complacent, and that complacency you longed for feels suffocating. Everything you've ever wanted to be, someone who fit in, someone who didn't make a fuss, someone who was able to wear many masks and play all of the parts that made people comfortable, it's left you crippled inside your mind and crawling inside your skin, because whose skin even is this at the end of the day? Time starts to become a burden, a relentless reminder of your wasted potential, a ticking ghost that you can't see or touch, but you can still feel its weight, because every second you aren't someone, you're no one. So I invite you to peel back the layers of complacency and question your entire existence with me on this journey through I Saw the TV Glow. Spoilers ahead.
It's just the suburbs.
The camera moves through a quiet suburban neighborhood, manicured lawns and trimmed trees in a ticky-tacky line. The ice cream truck at the end of the street catches your eye like a unicorn in the middle of a field of horses. Its bright colors against the boring, uneventful backdrop can't help but draw your attention as it whisks you away from the uncomplicated landscape of everyday life. A brilliant way to start a movie about the mundanity of suburban living because it's like a scream amongst silence. It's a voice that isn't asking to be seen so much as it's asking to be let out. This movie is full of color against dull backdrops. It draws the viewer's attention to a specific area, place, thing, whatever. It's thematically relevant to the movie. Owen, a young boy, sits in his living room. His eyes caress the TV while the pink opaque, a teen drama, plays on the screen. It's more than just a show. It's a nostalgic representation of Owen's childhood, a place in his mind where he can be free. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Owen's adult narration tells the audience that he's about to rewatch his favorite show, The Pink Opaque. Experiencing your childhood shows as an adult can create a longing for the way you once were. Mostly the freedom and welcome to uncertainty about your future that comes with being a child. It's like an adult safe space. Random thought, but the music in this scene reminds me a lot of the game Life is Strange, if any of you have ever played it. Anyway, in the next scene, Owen hangs around for an event at school with his mom, and you can tell they have a great relationship. She encourages the best parts of her son, for him to be expressive, for him to be himself. Owen meets a young girl at the school, and it seems like they have a lot in common because she's reading a book called The Pink Opaque. But when Owen tries to make conversation, it appears that, at this time at least, he doesn't currently watch the show. Both Owen and Maddy seem like outcasts, not because they're bullied or they have a lack of quality friendships in their lives, but because they are different than their peers. There is this sadness that permeates the atmosphere when they're on screen. Sometimes it's definitive, like when Maddy talks about the relationship she has with her stepdad, or when we see the parts of a broken relationship that Owen has with his own dad. Sometimes it's just an invisible presence that as a viewer you can't quite pinpoint, but the Pink Opaque lights them up when they talk about it. Maddy points out that the school feels different when they have Colonial Day, and they bring in the planetarium exhibit. More specifically, she notes that it's special because the school transforms. The verbiage here is used for a reason, and that will be more obvious later on in the movie. Maddy shares her book and knowledge about the Pink Opaque with Owen. Owen can't stay up late enough to watch the show, and we learn a little more about Maddy in this moment. Her mom doesn't care about her, and thus isn't concerned with Maddy and the time she spends being absorbed in the TV. The two make a plan to have a sleepover in order to watch The Pink Opaque. In order to do this, Owen has to lie to his mom, which I think creates a small sense of guilt surrounding his friendship with Maddy. Owen's mother discusses the plans he has with his dad. She is clearly having to defend something as simple as a sleepover to him. Owen's dad feels like an enigma. His representation within the film is mysterious and distant, and every time he's on the screen, the angles are strange and his look is strange, or it seems like he's just more of an ominous spirit that exists around Owen rather than a dad. The scene shifts as we step outside of the house for a moment. The chalk in the middle of the road is glowing, and a slow mist diffuses throughout the neighborhood. It's almost like Owen is manifesting scenes from The Pink Opaque. We transition from that scene to a brightly lit one where Owen is pretending to go to his friend's house as his mom drops him off. He walks in the rain for a while as the scene transitions from day to night. Maddy has a sweet spot in her basement where she can watch TV away from her family. We actually never meet Maddy's family. That's how isolated her life feels. Old caricatures of 90s TV flash on the screen, and Maddy's eyes are glued once The Pink Opaque starts playing. Owen is also immediately drawn to the show. The pink opaque has the same glowy resonance as the movie's real-life universe. You can easily see the parallels between the settings in the show and Owen's perspective, creating an odd familiarity and an indistinguishable nature between the two universes. Even the inhuman pink opaque characters like the ice cream man have a connection, especially when we flip from his scene in the show to the ice cream truck that exists in, I guess, Owen's mind. The truck billows purple smoke and has a neon hue that gives it this dreamlike quality. The constant abrupt movement between scenes is used to show the audience that they are indeed related to one another, the show and the movie's real-life universe. Maddy and Owen spend some time after the show talking about its themes, and Maddy gives Owen a rundown of the characters. The two main characters, Tara and Isabel, are lifelong friends who have a strong psychic connection to one another. Tara is a badass demonologist, and Maddy connects with this character the most. She seems like she has a strong desire to emulate Tara's strength. Maddy's desire to become more like Tara is a mask that she will continue to wear throughout the film. It will fit better and better as time goes on, to the point where it feels like Maddy is no more and Tara is the only one there. Mr. Melancholy is another character in the show. He's a bad guy and he wants to eat the entire world. He wants to poison you and take over your soul. He is the final boss of the battle of life. The pink opaque is providing not just an outlet for Owen and Maddy, but a place where they can exist freely. Maddy has immersed herself in the universe for so long that it feels like real life to her. It feels like real life more than her own life does. It's everything for her. Both teens are looking for a way out of their circumstances. They're looking for adventure and fun and to exist in an authentic way, in a place that feels comfortable to them. When things become complicated by Owen's mother's cancer diagnosis, it is even more enticing for him to become absorbed within the world of the pink opaque. He is withdrawing from his mother and subsequently his own existence because of her diagnosis. She tries to talk to him, but he is distant and likely doesn't even recognize what he needs in this moment with her. The dynamic between Owen and his father is very tense, and I'm sure it's making it even harder to reconcile his mother's diagnosis. At one point, the three of them are in the car, and Owen asks to stay up late to watch the pink opaque. Owen's dad replies, "Isn't that a show for girls?" Whatever that means. And his ignorance speaks volumes about the way he supports Owen or doesn't support him, and what his boundaries are for his son. He actively discourages any sort of expression that slightly deviates from gender stereotypes. Something as simple as a TV show can make this man uncomfortable.
That what felt like years in this world was actually just seconds.
Owen breaks the fourth wall in the next scene, giving us direct narration about the events and his feelings after that moment. He's still not allowed to watch the pink opaque because he can't stay up late enough to do that, even though he's well into his high school career at this point. So Maddy leaves him tapes. I want to note that the music becomes a little more intense and louder at this point. Owen is a teenager now, and the change in score appropriately indicates the intensity of this transitional stage. There are some really cool animations here too. Maddy writes on the tapes as a way to communicate with Owen about what's happening in the show that week. It's a unique way for the two to dialogue without actually dialoguing, a safe way to continue their communication because Owen is too awkward to talk to Maddy after the sleepover. Separate yet connected, somewhat like Isabel and Tara are on the show. Maddy is becoming increasingly obsessed with the pink opaque. She tells Owen in her notes that the titular characters in the show are like her family now. Watching her spiral through these notes on the tapes is an interesting way to portray such an important moment. She talks about Melancholy and his evil plans, the Drain Lords and how to stop them, which is by not thinking about them, by the way. The musical score isn't the only transitional indication. On the walls throughout the school are motivational quotes about life. Pain is weakness leaving the body, to thine own self be true. These quotes point out the transformative journey our characters are embarking on, from childhood to being a teen and into adulthood. There are so many changes and it's important to engage with that change, but it's even more important to embrace it so that you avoid becoming lost in the process. On the door in the dark room where Maddy leaves the tapes, there's a sign that says safe to enter. Obviously, the light exposure to the dark room can mess up the pictures as they develop, but for Owen, this means so much more. This area is a space that he and Maddy share together. It's a space that makes him feel safer. Maddy is a person that he feels safe with, even if it's too awkward to talk to her right now. The latest tape Maddy's given Owen is about the demons Marco and Polo, a discomforting symbolic mirror of the connection between Isabel and Tara, but also the connection between Owen and Maddy. Melancholy has summoned them and put them together. They are both the product of melancholy and in direct opposition to him, recognizing that he needs to be defeated. So the sadness that connected and brought Maddy and Owen together is the same sadness that they need to defeat in order to become their best selves. Maddy and Owen have an unplanned meetup in the school's bleachers. They are in different but similar spots in their lives. Maddy is upset because her best friend has made the change from alt girl to cheerleader. It happens, and that's natural, but it's the first indication that she's having a hard time reconciling the changes she and those around her are going through. It's cute because her frustration sounds like Napoleon Dynamite, and it's a very real teen moment. Owen invites himself over to Maddy's house, and it seems like he finally wants to broaden the connection he has with her. Maddy shoots down advances Owen was never making by telling him that she's into girls, but Owen isn't into anyone. I'm not sure if the movie is telling us that Owen is asexual or that Owen is just still conflicted about his sexual preferences, but it is clear either way that Owen is trying to figure himself out. Owen feels like a part of him is missing, like someone has come along and scooped out the part of him that wants a romantic connection with someone else. It makes sense that Owen wants to withdraw from the people around him. He doesn't seem to understand his own needs, and it makes handling anyone else's needs impossible. Plus, he is likely somewhat ashamed because his dad is blatantly unsupportive. Sexuality is incredibly simple and complex at the same time. It's a huge part of how a person sees themselves or identifies. Being young adds an even more complicated layer to things. Not only are you trying to find yourself, but if you don't have people in your life who support you during this time, it creates even more confusion. Either way, Owen feels safe to tell Maddy about this, and it's a brief but honest moment between the two kids. Maddy doesn't pressure him to be anything at all. She actually just references the pink opaque and tells him that he might be like Isabel because he's afraid of what's inside of him. It's as if the pink opaque is the only lens that Maddy can see the world through. Maddy becomes emotional during one of the show's episodes, and Owen looks at her with wonderment. Anytime Maddy talks to Owen about her feelings, she makes a point to put a literal and metaphorical wall between them. She sits in the stairway when they talk. This seems to help her maintain her distance with not only Owen, but also her own emotions. There's always a barrier between Maddy and real life, either a barrier that is a literal wall or a barrier that comes in the form of a TV show. Maddy tells Owen what every teen tells their friends. She wants to leave this dead-ass town. Owen points out that she's the only person he watches the show with, so what will he do without her? And I'm sure this is just his way of telling her that he needs her. Maddy slinks from her hiding spot and comes out to draw a ghost on the back of Owen's neck, like they do in the pink opaque. Maddy connects with Owen in the only way she knows how in this moment, through the show. The two are a lot like ghosts themselves. They don't feel seen or heard. Also, as they age, their presence will start to wither and disappear, like a ghost that's been forgotten with time. Owen listens to Maddy when she says she wants to leave, but the idea of leaving is uncomfortable for him, and it seems like Maddy assumes that they both want this. Owen's head spins with worry, and he eventually goes and tells an adult about Maddy's plans, preventing him from potentially leaving with her. He wants the adults around him to dissuade him from making what feels like a mistake. Owen's mother finally succumbs to her illness, and Maddy goes missing within that same week, an obvious blow to Owen's psyche. Maddy's disappearance is ominous. Her TV is left burning in the backyard. It's like she was never even there in the first place. That year, the pink opaque was also canceled, bringing Owen's entire world to a complete halt. The years pass and Owen is now an adult. He seems stuck in his surroundings. He still lives with his dad, and his coworkers are assholes that he just has to put up with. They go out of their way to make Owen feel like an outsider. They poke and prod at him. He doesn't make eye contact, so they attack that. Owen seems socially unaware of his surroundings, but to be fair, fuck those guys. Even if you were socially aware, it's unlikely that you'd want to have a conversation with them anyway, so oh well. They spend time degrading Owen, and it's a tough scene to watch. Owen may be on the spectrum, or this might be the movie trying to convey abject complacency within his character. Either way, it's a tough watch. Flashing lights are a continuous theme throughout the movie, and I really don't know what to make of them. It's like a light bulb flicker that's seen from time to time in the movie. It's in different scenes. And if anybody has any idea what this is symbolizing, let me know in the comments, because to me, it seems like it might be Owen's light starting to dim. It also happens when he's a child, though, too. So it's not his light is dimming overall, but maybe in that moment, his light is starting to dim. Like a moment where you can pinpoint that, hey, this was affecting me. Something like that. I don't know. There's a downed power line in the middle of the road as Owen is driving home. The sparks fly and the power line is clearly very active. Despite this, Owen walks over to the area and sees a bunch of flyers. The flyers are talking about the pink opaque. It's a warning, a prompt for a memory. We're not really sure. Owen gets home and tells his dad about the power line. His dad just looks on with perplexity at him. It's like he's never even seen this person before. It's so strange because he doesn't say anything. He just stares blankly, proving that he's always been and will always be disconnected from his son. Maddy finally comes home. While Owen is buying groceries at the grocery store, he sees her in the distance. She's standing in the middle of the store like a weirdo, and Owen doesn't really even recognize her at first. He runs up to her and gives her a big hug while he fires off questions about where she's been. She's mysterious, but she says she'll tell him everything if he goes to a bar on the other side of town with her. They pass a fun center sign on their way. The irony in the scene is that the sign looks worn and very dusty, so there probably isn't much fun happening at Fun Center. At the bar, there's a live singer, and her songs are oddly specific. She talks about her childhood and how she didn't have any doors to her bedroom, signifying the open mind and life of a child. But doors close when you become an adult. You don't want to let anybody in. Probably because your doors being open means vulnerability, and throughout your childhood, you learned that vulnerability is very scary. Anyway, she expresses her boredom with life. Wanting more and wanting more and wanting more can leave you empty. Wanting nothing and staying in place can leave you empty. Is there a good answer here? Maddy begins her talk with Owen by referencing the pink opaque. She asks if he remembers the show. Of course, Owen does remember the show, and it seems like she's suggesting something a little insane. She suggests through her questioning that the pink opaque was more than just a show, it was real life. Moreover, it was something that the two had manifested together. We flash back to a moment that was never shown to us before. It's a moment from when they were kids. While in a room together, Owen comes out of the bathroom. He's wearing a gown and he looks fairly nervous about showing himself to Maddy. But Maddy looks as if she's proud of Owen. She is happy to see him in his real skin. She continues questioning Owen about the way things were back then. She asks if it felt like the show was narrating Owen's life for him. Was it like watching his own life play out before his eyes? Maddy is bringing up so many feelings in Owen, and she finally tells him where she's been, inside the pink opaque. Some things seem purposely left ambiguous, but one thing I can say is that Owen feels comfortable shedding his skin in front of Maddy, and it's a really beautiful moment.
You need to help me!
With this revelation, the movie abruptly shifts its tone into a darker, more abrasive mood. Maddy tells Owen that he can't trust anyone because they're all working for Mr. Melancholy. Maddy is somewhat right. Owen can't trust the people in his life. That's why he doesn't. He only talks about certain things with Maddy for a reason. The people in his life are closed off and they make Owen feel strange. They want him to exist unoffensively to make themselves feel better. In the last episode of the series, Mr. Melancholy, Marco, and Polo all have come together to tear the girls in the show away from one another. He forces Isabel to drink a strange juice, like a cult member who's forced to be a part of a planned ritual sacrifice, a cultural representation of polite society and its expectations and how it shoves them down your throat. Mr. Melancholy urges Isabel to take the juice and give herself over to the pressure of being a zombie. Isabel is a proxy for Owen. She's not eager to take the poison, but she doesn't fight nearly enough to get away from it either. The connection becomes even more clear when Owen sees himself in the show. Mr. Melancholy twists a snow globe in his hands that has a picture of Owen watching TV inside of it. It's a wonderful prison, Mr. Melancholy expresses to the viewers. This is either saying the TV is a prison or that society is a prison, or probably both. Probably both. Owen is forced to watch moments of his childhood flash before his eyes, moments that he no longer has access to, feelings he no longer recognizes, the freedom from childhood being lost to time. Everything that Owen was and what he could have been shatters against the desire to be normal. Isabel is eventually buried alive, and Owen is buried alive, forced to live in a prison that he willingly entered, throwing the keys to freedom just barely out of reach but still in sight. The pressure to change and expand is too much for him, so he stays right where he is, comfortably uncomfortable. When Owen's father pops into the room, it seems that Owen is being absorbed into the TV. His dad rushes to get him out and puts him in a scalding hot shower. Mist drains over the two, and Owen screams, "You are not my father," at the top of his lungs as he resists the water. Water is cleansing, usually, metaphorically, but I'm not sure that's the way it's being used in this particular moment. Owen walks outside of his house, and his coworkers are standing on the sidewalk looking toward his door. They just stare at him, into him. Owen is starting to see what Maddy was talking about. You just can't trust the people around you. They're all willing and eager to watch you burn. These people participate in your downfall through smaller and larger ways. Some moments are so minute, but they last a lifetime. Nothing overt, just small comments leaving you thinking about your entire existence for hours. Maddy talks about her time outside of the town, how she went to Arizona, worked for a while, and felt even more lost than she was before. The change didn't make her feel any better. In fact, the change made it worse. It was like a confirmation that things were going to be the way they were no matter what she did. She would always be living in an inescapable cycle of boredom, trying to run away into brick walls, until she asks someone to bury her alive. She unknowingly prepared herself for her subsequent rebirth. It's one of those special days at school that Maddy was talking about as the two returned to the place where they met. The makeshift planetarium swirls around the solar system and star identities. Maddy stands amongst the plume of planetary systems as a cataclysm of ideas start to form, proving that it is important to find oneness universally within our own selves. We are the sum of many parts, and we mean far more than what we think. Maddy tells Owen that her experience when she was buried alive was like she was watching herself inside of a TV set. She was getting smaller and smaller as she faded into the background. At first, she was clawing and scratching, fighting for her way out. But when she succumbed to her circumstances, she fought hard enough to escape her own poorly laid plans. She felt herself lift and drift away from her former self, all of her memories becoming distant and eventually non-existent. Like Tara trying to find Isabel, Maddy tried to find Owen, but she couldn't. Once she left, the connection that she felt with him had vanished. The frequency they were once so dependent on had dropped. Instead, Maddy found their hearts in the freezer where Mr. Melancholy had placed them. They were still beating. The two were still both alive, but she wasn't able to reunite Isabel or Owen with his heart. She warns Owen that if he doesn't become reborn, he may risk never being able to escape the Midnight Realm. He may relegate himself to an unhappy suburban existence for the rest of his lowly days. He needs to join Maddy in her ego death to realize what he can become. Maddy guides him to the field of the high school. It's where Isabel, his true identity, is buried. Owen, like before, refuses to listen to Maddy about what is necessary to become whole again. He tackles her and then runs off. Maddy never comes back to convince him that his decision to avoid rebirth was stupid. This makes Owen question whether or not she was right about all of what she said. What if he was wasting the best parts of himself on wasting away? His inaction creates a wonder about what life could have been had he just taken the leap for himself. Like Maddy, he succumbs to his indifference and becomes a cog in the machine instead. A message written in chalk glows brightly against the black tar. It is still not too late. His life is like a water spout that someone shut off and is slowly leaking into the sink. He stays in the same house that he's always lived in, even after his father passes away. The theater that he used to work at shuts down, and he moves over to Fun Center. He even has his own family now. He looks into the camera and tells the audience that he loves his family. His painful smile suggests there is a lot to swallow in that statement. Having a family can be fulfilling, but if you aren't living in a way that's authentic to yourself, it's likely that that family can feel smothering. It comes full circle when we revisit the moment where he said he was rewatching his favorite childhood show at the beginning of the movie. It's different than he remembers. It's like a watered-down version of what we've been shown. Reality looks so different when you're growing up, but the memories distort, fade, and become hollow once you're an adult. The bright lights start to dim with age. Owen's worn-out appearance is a testament to how he feels within his soul. He is a husk of a man, emaciated and weak. The employees at Fun Center all sing happy birthday to a little boy in a party room. On their second round, Owen lets out a shriek. It's full of pain, like he wants to rip himself to pieces. He begs the people around him for help, but they don't even look at him. In fact, the only thing they do is pause and look at the ground. Not one single person reacts. He screams for his mom and then collapses onto the ground, his breathing wheezing in and out. He gazes at his own reflection in the mirror in the bathroom, lips dry and chapped. His complexion is almost gray. His breathing continues to labor as he cuts into his own chest. A light emanates from the area, and Owen pries it open with both his hands, exposing his wound even further. The moment fades as Owen floats through Fun Center, apologizing for his outburst earlier, but no one listens or looks up to him as he passes. He's a ghost, and it seems like he was never even there.
Isn't that a show for girls?
Owen and Maddy are connected souls that feel like kindred spirits sent to one another to help each other through life. When Maddy leaves, it seems like she loses it. Her sense of reality becomes distorted, and she doesn't identify with the person that she was. She was lost in the show, lost in her own imagination. Owen chose not to let himself become immersed in the same toxic way, but he also continued to resist the parts of him that were real. Owen's refusal to give himself over to his desires caused turmoil. Being himself felt terrifying, and he actively, fervently rejected Maddy's attempts to free him, to his detriment. So while he may not have lost himself inside the show, he still lost himself. In every way, every turn, he lost himself. I think a lot of people can commiserate with the feeling of boredom and immersing themselves a bit too much in their escapism, whether that be games, movies, music, or socials, whatever. Escaping is great, necessary even, but when that's something that becomes something you do all the time, it becomes toxic and you can easily get lost within that. Embrace age and change. Embrace who you become within that. Escape when you need to, but don't lose yourself within that, or it may just hollow you out and eat you alive. Keep a lookout on the community tab for my next A24 video, and I will see you then. Bye!